Hi, everybody. I'm Gretchen Bailey, and I am here with Chief Optometric Editor Ben Casella, who is in Augusta, Georgia, and we are going to talk for a bit about what he's been doing in his practice since COVID-19, and he's recently opened up. So, Ben, thanks so much for talking with me tonight.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see
anybody.
You. Like literally see. We aren't really seeing people, so
Literally
yeah.
seeing your face.
So tell me about what it's been like in Georgia, because you have the dubious honor, I guess, of being in the state that really wanted to open things up early. And so
Yes.
You've been open for about a week and a half now, but let's jump in the Wayback Machine and talk about what happened. What did you do? Did you close first before you got the word, or what happened?
So in the beginning, BC, before COVID, March 10th was my birthday. March 11th was my father's birthday. We were sitting on my parents' patio. We were all having a non-socially distanced dinner, whatever that is. And the topic of the novel coronavirus came up. And my brother-in-law, who is really one of the smartest people, maybe the smartest guy that I know, he is a pulmonary critical care doctor at a local public hospital. So here in Augusta, if you get COVID like really bad, he's the guy who's like sticking the tube in you so that you can continue to live. He said, this is going to be a really big deal, and we're all going to know somebody who died from this. This is going to be a really significant deal, and we all need to quarantine for a period of time.
Wow.
So that was March 11th, and I was thinking, really? I mean, here in America, you just don't know. And 6 days later was St. Patrick's Day, and we canceled all our patients for that day. And it happened that fast. And we were, CDC came out with their guidelines pretty early in the game, isolated eye care and dental care to see emergency patients only. So what does that tangibly mean? What it means is that our job for those, I believe, 7 or 8 weeks, it's weird to think about these things even in a temporal aspect anymore. Our job was specifically keep people safe, don't have people come out of their homes, but if there's emergencies, keep those emergencies out of the emergency room. So that was our job for a couple of months. 2 or 3 weeks ago, CDC said, start to get your non-emergent patients in. I waited several days after that guideline was augmented to start seeing anybody who was non-emergent, and I calculated it out. I'm big on metrics. I like to see, I internally audit my practice all the time, and I calculated that seeing emergency patients only was a couple of months basically operating at less than 1% of our patient load. I never once complained about it. I never once complained about it because this is what everybody on earth is doing. This is just what we're all doing, at least those of us who are in the private sector, and all else. This is just how the planet should have been functioning at the time. But I waited a few days after they told us to stop seeing just emergency patients because, first of all, I was still waiting on a couple of pieces of PPE. Had my non-contact forehead thermometer, had oodles of gloves, had face shields, masks, blah blah blah. But I was waiting on polycarbonate shields, basically countertop sneeze guards for the front of the office, and got those in, and we started seeing about a patient every hour, and that's what we're doing now. And I think we could move up maybe every 45 minutes, and me still feel comfortable about it. But the psychology of the whole thing is just, it's this pandemic is physically deadly, but the pandemic and everything that you hear about it, especially I'm talking to you, network news, is psychological warfare on me
Right.
and on a lot of other people. And so I just wasn't there. And so several days later, that's what we started to do. And that's what we're still doing about every hour or so. And I think we're going to be that way essentially until they relax social distancing. When is that going to be? No one knows. And if anybody tells you that they know, they're either lying or delusional or both, because they just don't know.
Right.
That's how my day was.
Well, let's go back a minute. So you
Sure.
said on St. Patrick's Day that
Yep.
you canceled your patients, and so
Correct.
you canceled them for that day, and then
Correct.
moving forward.
Correct. Yeah, we got everybody out. And we, well, I say canceled, we postponed everyone. There was no residual, you really need to be fit with contacts now. There was just none of that.
Right.
And so we are postponed. We're booked out. We're booking out into August now.
Wow.
And I know that I'm going to lose patience over this. And I know that that's going to happen, but it's the way that I feel things ought to be right now. And until they do some sort of a lift on social distancing, this is just how it's going to be.
Do you have patients who were upset
Yeah.
when they were canceled at the time? And you say now
Yes.
you're booking out till August. And is that how far you're normally booked out?
No, we're normally booked out. No, the short answer is no. I wish that was a resounding yes. I wish I was that popular. I wish I was that good. But we're typically booked out about 3 weeks. But this is just with social distancing in place. I do have it in July, seeing a patient about every 30 minutes or so. I don't know if I'm going to be seeing more than that. I don't know if I'm going to be seeing less than that. I know that we need to prepare for the future, but for me personally, I'm tired of hearing about the second wave of this. It's like, just let me get through the first wave of this, and then we can start talking about the second wave of this. And if we have to do this again, how much money the government's going to have to print to get us through this. But we, at least for my patient base, everybody has by and large been very appreciative of the stance that we're taking. And the stance that, optometry as a whole is taking. I've had a few patients that just, they think it's a hoax, or they think that this is ridiculous. And it's not a hoax. It's not ridiculous. This is a real virus that really kills people. And by and large, patients have been appreciative. Now, just to expand upon that for a second, we have been extending contact lens prescriptions. We've been extending glasses prescriptions. I've been driving around town. Augusta's got a couple 100,000 people in it, but it's like a big neighborhood. And I've been driving around town with gloves on, putting trials of contacts into people's mailboxes, just being neighborly. I mean, I know that that's probably really good practice management, but it's also just doing right by your patients.
Are you doing that because patients call you and say, I'm running out of contact lenses and I need more? Or are you preempting that and looking at records and noticing that Mrs. Smith is going to be running out of contact lenses soon and you're going to help her out?
No, I'm doing it reactively.
Got it.
Yeah, and if there's anybody, if any of my patients are listening, and you need a couple of pairs of contacts to get you through until your insurance kicks in or whatnot, um, we got you.
Now, what about your staff? So you have kept some staff. They've been making some calls, and there have been some folks in the office. So now that you're coming back, did your staff stay with you that whole time? And did you have anybody who didn't want to come back and say, look, I don't want to see people?
So that's a great question. I had a staff member who is up in her 60s, and since the end of 2019, not that up in your 60s is old by any stretch of the imagination, and around the end of 2019, she told us March 31st is my day. That's I'm retiring. That's it just made sense, and we're very happy for her. And it was an amicable parting and all that. And with a global pandemic and a small business loan, that got interesting. I was open for emergencies only a few days a week for a few hours a day. I have a very small staff. I think we've said before, it's me, my father. At that point, I had 4 other people working for me in an office that is literally over 100 years ago was a movie theater. So we got space. And so we can socially distance very far beyond 6 feet. So I had 2 staff members coming in for a few hours a day, a few days a week. And then the other staff member came in the afternoon because she didn't have any childcare for her young child. And so we got everything sanitized, and it was just her and him in the afternoon, and they didn't even have to worry about being around us. She just came in specifically to reschedule patients and to answer the phone. And it worked out really great. So I'm going to circle back around to how this relates to the small business loan and the PPP loan program, in that it was based on 2019 taxes. This guy had more employees by 1 in 2019 than I did March 31st of 2020.
Oh,
And
right.
so that introduced a little bit of emotion into that one employee retiring, because I applied for the loan, around the 1st of April, around the beginning of April is when I think the first week of April, I think, is when the government finally decided how they were going to do it. They changed the application a few times. We filled out a few different applications, all of us. And so it was based on my 2019 payroll, which was payroll tax, health insurance, retirement, and unemployment, all of that.
Right.
But when I got the loan, I had 1 fewer employee. So I knew that I was going to have to hire somebody. Frankly, I mean, never count your chickens. We were really busy and having a really good start of the year before this happened. And I knew that we were going to have to hire somebody back. But I have hired somebody, and she starts in about 2 weeks. And so I'm going to have the same number of employees at the end of my 8-week period as I did in 2019, which is the monetary sum that they based the loan off of. I don't know that that's really going to matter. And the government has not hashed out exactly how the loan forgiveness, exactly what the details are.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard hearsay that it may be extended beyond 8 weeks, because there's a lot of businesses like restaurants that couldn't just, open up and see a customer an hour. There's a lot of businesses that just were still hunkered down,
Right.
as was I when we got the loan. But I still had my payroll, and a lot of people had to furlough workers who had larger numbers of employees. And so it's taken them a while to get up and running, and they're not going to spend through the money within 8 weeks. They may need 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, who knows? But there's hearsay that they may extend it beyond 8 weeks. That hasn't happened yet, but I hear that it may. And I speculate that it probably will, but I don't know. I don't know if the number of employees is going to matter. Again, I'm a big metrics guy. Everybody's talking about you need to spend 75% on payroll with this loan, and I'm just about halfway through it now. In fact, I'm just over halfway through it, and I've spent 78% on payroll, so I feel good about that. And the other 25% I have spent on rent. I own the practice. My father owns the building, so I pay him rent every month. I've spent it on rent and utilities. I got a separate checking account for the PPP loan, and it's just called Casella Eye Center PPP account, just so that everything's neat and tidy. And I'm just trying to dot I's and cross T's and think of everything that I can think of, because I really don't want to get into a situation where I have to pay this money back. I really want this to function as a grant, and I am using this money in the true spirit of the law.
Right.
And I really hope that that means that it actually functions as a grant, but we shall see.
Right, right. So you mentioned that you're in practice with your dad.
Yeah.
Is he back seeing patients as well?
He's seeing a few patients. We both really don't like the masks and the goggles.
Well, who does?
And the HEPA filters I do like the slit lamp shield. Thank you, Carl Zeiss, for the slit lamp shield. I'm definitely keeping that around just as part of the new normal. But also if a patient had onions on their burger at lunch, or if I had onions on my burger at lunch, it's just a great thing that I never really thought of, you know? But yeah, he's still seeing, he's back seeing a few patients. Yeah. And he's happy to be back because he loves what he does.
Yeah. That's, it's hard when your life just stops like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little big picture? What do you think we'll be looking at in terms of what you're calling new normal? Do you think are you going to keep that slit lamp shield? Do you think
keeping the shield?
What about temperature checks? What about patient spacing?
You know, the temperature checks are so easy that I don't have a problem keeping those. As long as the CDC says that we should be doing that. I don't know, Gretchen. I really don't know. Nobody knows. I mean, nobody wants to have their temperature checked all the time. And maybe that is going to be part of the new normal. I would assume maybe not.
Well, look at it this way. Do you check blood pressure on your patients? I mean, that's a fairly new thing. And when you go to any doctor, you have your temperature checked. I mean, maybe not the dentist, but it's not an uncommon thing.
You know, that's kind of how I view the masks. There's a lot of people out there that say, you know, I'm not going to wear a mask because about how I personally feel about this virus, or how I personally feel about my basic freedoms. But to that I would counter, when's the last time you went out to eat? Did you wear a shirt and shoes? Were you bothered by the fact that they wouldn't let you in if you didn't wear a shirt and shoes? And that's just kind of how I feel about it. I did have one lady that didn't want me to check her temperature, and I explained to her as nicely as I could that she's not coming in if she doesn't have her temperature checked, because that's just specifically an itemized guideline that we just need to be following. I will say, if I could go back in time, I would have invented the non-contact forehead thermometer, because they're not that cheap and you can't find one on earth right now. So
yeah, everybody's looking to get those. Absolutely. What about optometry in general? Do you think that there will be bigger changes for the profession given what everyone has gone through? Do you think people will look to connect more electronically and not in person? Do you think meetings will change? Do you think we will have other changes within optometry, for example, disinfecting things a little more frequently? Not that anybody had a filthy office beforehand, but everyone really has upped the sanitizing and wiping down frames more now when patients
Right, right.
So do you think any of this is going to stick around?
Yeah, some of it's got staying power. Some of it's going to stick around. I think things like sanitizing frames that not all of us thought of. I think that's gonna hang around. I do. I did have one patient who asked me if it was different to clean my equipment in between patients, and I just laughed. I told her, I said, do you really not think that I don't clean my equipment in between patients when there's not a global pandemic? Like, you should find another optometrist if you honestly don't think that I do that. You know, yes,
That's funny, but not funny, you know?
yeah, right. Funny, not funny. but the slit lamp partition is going to stay. I think temperature checks will probably be relaxed at some point. I think masks will probably be relaxed, although I'll probably keep mine for some time. Yeah, some of it's going to have staying power, and it's going to piggyback on, what are guidelines? What do we know about the virus? What do we know about the virulence of the virus? Is it as virulent as we think it is? Is it more virulent as we think it is? Are there fewer cases than we know of? Are there more cases that we know of? What is the true death rate? How many people die of it and how many people die with it?
Right.
I think that time, as with all science, and we're scientists by nature, we need longitudinal data. We don't need anecdotal case reports. Unfortunately, anecdotal case reports is the bulk of what we have, and that's the bulk of what makes it onto network news. And we have to filter against that, but we need longitudinal data on this particular coronavirus. Coronaviruses have been around for a long time, and we've known about them for a long time, and they've made people sick for a long time, and they've killed people for a long time, and they've given children a Kawasaki-like response for a long time. This is just a novel coronavirus. It's just a very new player on the block that just happens to be particularly virulent. And we need longitudinal data on it, and we'll get that. And that will dictate how we practice. That will dictate how we schedule our patients and our workflow. That'll dictate if we go to movie theaters. That'll dictate when we go back to see a play. That'll dictate how closely we sit in restaurants. But we have to subscribe to science. And we have to be able, it's so sad to me that everything with this particular pathogen is, it seems like all of our truths are relative. And it seems like the more the dust settles out, it seems like that sense of relativism, in science, we talk about laws, we talk about rules, we talk about absolutes. And it seems like everybody has their own truth, and it seems to be falling more and more along political lines. And I think that's a real sad state of affairs for the country.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned your brother-in-law a few minutes ago,
Yeah.
What does he say about where he thinks all of this is going? Because he told you a few days before that things are going to change, and they in fact did.
They did.
What does he predict coming down the road?
He sees the immediate future, and he is a very pragmatic individual. And I don't want to speak for him because I haven't really had too many candid conversations with him, but he talks about the immediate future. He is seeing cases decline, at least in his ICU here in downtown Augusta, Georgia. He's seen a recent decline, and he feels good about that. But their hospital is gearing up for phase 2. There's actually another hospital in a different part of town that they are essentially rigging up to be just like a huge COVID ICU. And he hopes that they don't have to use it. But like a good Boy Scout, they're prepared.
Better to be prepared, I guess. And if,
Better to have it and not need it, as
right,
the color says.
absolutely. Well, I'm really glad that we got a chance to put all this together, because I know that you've been doing those short video clips every week for a
Right.
while now,
For
and
for 480 weeks.
that's what it feels like, doesn't it?
It's
And
weird. It's just so weird. It's like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a packed waiting room would have been like the best thing on earth. And now, if there's more than two people in your waiting room, you're freaking out.
right,
It's just incredible. And the main point of my videos, and I hope that I did a good job of conveying it, was essentially to be a stream of consciousness. What do I think I'm doing right? What do I think I'm doing
right.
wrong as far as my preparation for the reopening, whenever that's going to happen? And just to convey to other doctors of optometry that you're not alone in your thoughts and in your fears and the fear of the unknown. Nobody likes the dark. Anybody tells you they like the dark, they're lying. Nobody likes fear of the unknown.
And I
And
think that was the worst thing about all of this, and really still is, because
yeah,
even that with places starting to open up, even though we're not here yet where I am, there are a lot of unknowns, especially for young adults. Are they
yeah,
going to college in the fall or back to
right,
college? Or
right.
what can you do? So
And
there are a lot of unknowns in many, many avenues.
to be a high school senior this year, how sad. I
It,
mean, it sounds, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, but your senior year in high school, man, that's your whole life, you know? And I
yeah,
look back on mine with a lot of love and just a lot of good times. And I just, it's shout out to all the high school seniors, college seniors out there, you know, but fear of the unknown and fear of what's to come has been real and palpable and tangible in my head. And I just wanted to convey to our listeners and our viewers and our readers that, you know, it's if you have gone through this COVID shutdown period, and if you're going through this, where like one moment you're thinking, like it's almost like a moment of like serenity, where you're thinking, you know what, it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. This is all. We just have to let it come out in the wash. My practice is gonna be fine. And the next moment, you're literally having existential thoughts about your practice, my practice that I bought from my father, who bought from his father, having existential thoughts about it. You know, you're not alone, because I have too.
right.
And optometry, we're a resilient bunch. And I truly do think that we're going to be fine from this. I don't know that we're going to be better from this. I think our hygiene and our, you know, like the cleaning of the frames and whatnot, temperature checks, masks, whatever has staying power, whatever sticks, I think will make us better for this. But I think we're going to be just fine.
Well, on that note, I will say thank you for sharing your thoughts, not only with me, but with our readers and our viewers. And I appreciate that you took us on the ride with you during the time of your shutdown while you were planning. And I think it was really helpful for others to see what you were going through and what you were thinking. So thanks very much, Ben. I really appreciate that you were willing to put yourself out there like that.
Thank you for letting me end on that note. And it's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thanks, Ben.
See you soon.